Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for being here. My name is Samantha Leal, Managing Editor here at Well+Good, and I'm thrilled today to be hosting the panel about the state and future of wellness travel. 2020 has thrown us a lot of curveballs, but travel as a whole has been drastically transformed. Thanks in large part to the COVID-19 pandemic, traveler behavior has changed, and those in the industry have had to change with it. Adapting to the new normal of the world, wellness travel isn't just predicated on things like spas, retreats, fitness offerings, and more, but rather the safety of the experience itself and the task of putting a traveler at ease, mentally, physically, and even spiritually. So what is the new state of wellness travel? And what can travelers expect when all of this is over? And how will the industry continue to adapt to what seem to be never-ending changes? That's what we're going to find out with the help of our esteemed panelists. Thank you to the Tourism Authority of Thailand for sponsoring this panel, and thank you again to our panelists for being here. So to start us off, I'll intro our panelists. First off, we have Bryony Smythe, a yoga teacher and influencer and entrepreneur. With over 10 years of experience building teacher trainings, online content, festivals, and retreats, Briohny enjoys serving the global wellness community. Her dedication to yoga as a practice shines through in her signature classes that help practitioners discover the range of their abilities. Her immense social media following is a direct reflection of her understanding of the journey, as well as the care with which she dynamically adapts new content to naturally evolve student growth. Briohny's favorite moments are in helping people find and blend their true values into their practice. Welcome.
Thank you.
Susan Santiago, Head of Lifestyle and Miraval Operations at the Hyatt. Susan Santiago currently serves as Head of Lifestyle and Miraval Operations at Hyatt Hotels, where she is responsible for Hyatt's lifestyle collection while simultaneously overseeing the operations across all Miraval properties. Susan is a seasoned hospitality veteran and has been a member of the Hyatt family for over 25 years. She currently serves on the Inclusion and Diversity Council for Hyatt and is co-chair and executive sponsor for High Pride, Hyatt's LGBT diversity business resource group. In 2019, Susan earned the 34th spot on the 50 Most Powerful Latinas in Business list, which is compiled by the Association of Latino Professionals for America and published by Fortune magazine. In addition, Susan was also recognized by Chicago United as one of its 50 business leaders of color. So welcome, Susan.
Thank you.
And lastly, but not least, we have Avita Robinson, founder of NOMADNESS Travel Tribe and AUDACITY Fest. In September 2011, Evita Turquoise Robinson created the NOMADNESS Travel Tribe, an online social community primarily for travelers of color. NOMADNESS was the first of its kind targeting Black and Brown millennials in the newly coined Black travel movement. From the success of the online group, Evita has garnered partnerships with top brands and destinations around the world. In 2018, NOMADNESS Travel Tribe hosted AUDACITY Fest, an immersive experience that celebrates and creates a safe space for discussions centered around traveling the world as a person of color. Evita now serves as a contributing editor of Condé Nast Traveler, a keynote speaker, media personality, TED resident, and consultant for destination marketing organizations. Welcome, Evita.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Pleasure being here.
So for the next 45 or so minutes, we'll be having some panel questions, and then the last 10 minutes will be free for Q&A from the audience. So please look to the bottom of your Zoom window and you'll see a Q&A chat where you can throw in any questions for the panelists there. I also want to direct you to the chat function on the side probably of your Zoom window, where you can also talk with fellow attendees or throw your kind of ideas or thoughts there as we continue throughout this panel. I do want to note that this is not a place for any sort of harassment or targeted language, so moderators will be throwing people out should that be the case. Let's throw it to our panelists. So COVID-19 has had an unprecedented impact on the state of travel, including what travelers are comfortable with. So Evita, as far as the NOMADNESS Travel Tribe and your understanding of traveler behavior, what's top of mind for travelers in terms of safety and wellness, especially as we enter the new year?
Absolutely. And I want to start by saying I have 2 cats and one of my cat is catting right now. So I'm like, of course, as soon as we start, this is what's happening. Okay,
Right.
so safety is the number one priority. So I know a lot of different brands and companies and communities in the travel space have been doing their own pivots during quarantine. And so the two big things that NOMADNESS focused on were one, going digital with Audacity Festival, which you had brought up, which we've been able to execute 3 in the last 6 months, which still blows my mind. Our next one is in January, so we're prepping for that. But also we got into the world of data. And that's what really, really was very important for us. It was important for us to not have our community studied by a large research company, but us actually not only own the back end, but also be able to speak to the people in the actual community and what we're calling bring the numbers to life. So on December 10th, we're actually revealing the most robust data set that has been out, that has been taken in our community thus far. It was 89 questions. We teamed with Tourism Reset out of the University of Knoxville. So there are a lot of hands that are in this to give us really robust numbers. And I say that because we're actually in the middle of analyzing our data and identifying our trends. And the biggest trend that came out when it came to what is something that would stop a traveler of color from traveling to a destination, number one by far was safety. And safety looked like a lot of different things. For a traveler of color, me being a 30-something-year-old Black woman, it was a lot of, racism. Is this a place that not just tolerates, but also accepts our people because of what we're going through in the United States? People want to spend their hard-earned time and money in a place where they can actually relax. Another thing, because we also have intersections in our community as well with the LGBTQIA community, that also came up. A lot of COVID protocols, safety looks a lot different nowadays. It is multi-pronged on so many levels, right? And so really deep diving and understanding that for travelers of color, safety is huge, but it's also multi-tiered and a very layered conversation for us in so many different ways. And so that's been really eye-opening, but something that is really important. So that welcoming feeling also plays into the safety and acceptance wherever people are, spending their time and their money.
And that's such a great point as far as like what safety can mean to individuals and to travelers. And Susan, I'd love to kind of talk about how this behavior and also what kind of travelers are looking for, how that has been changing in the past year, and how that will continue to change in terms of stays and the wellness experiences that are offered.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thank you so much on behalf of our Miraval family. We're honored to be here talking with your audience today. So thank you so much. And Evita is absolutely spot on when she says that safety means is something different to different audiences. We upon the onset of the pandemic, we had to close down our Miraval properties, and as we thought about reopening them, one of the first things that we did is we actually went out with a survey to all of our guests, what we call our authentic circle members that are our loyal guests at Miraval, and our colleagues. And we actually asked them, what would it take for you to feel safe coming back to Miraval? And based on that information is how we created our safety and sanitation protocols that we put into play. We actually partnered with the Global Biorisk Advisory Council and worked with them on establishing what our new protocols for safety and sanitation were going to be. So, that was one of the, number one behavior changes that we've seen coming out of the pandemic. We've also seen things such as just our guests really wanting to experience our outdoor programming more. Very much interested, as you can imagine, people being quarantined and in their homes for the last 8 months. They really want the opportunity to connect with nature, to be outdoors, take a hike, experience our outdoor activity courses. But the one thing that I found extremely fascinating that we've seen from our guests is how they've especially reacted well to our digital mindfulness policy. We've always at Miraval, we've always been a digital device-free property because we believe that your digital devices can distract you from being present and really, impede your ability for self-discovery. And what we've seen with everyone being, in quarantine and working remotely and literally having your phones glued to you every day, being on Zoom calls and webinars, they are embracing the opportunity to take their cell phone and put it into a sleeping bag when they check into a Miraval and really just connect with each other, connect with nature, and connect with themselves. So, as we think about this moving forward into the future, into 2021, we're going to expand even more with a video series. We're going to partner with an expert author in the space to really explore the science behind digital mindfulness and give our guests the tools that they're going to need to establish a new relationship with their devices into the future.
Wow, that's really great. And so interesting to hear about, the outdoor experiences and grounding. I feel like that's such a huge wellness trend in general, and such a, interesting thing to take into a place where you're going to stay. And on that note, Brownie, like wellness experiences and travel experiences were such a huge part of travel, and it was such a trend coming into 2020 of these experiences, right, of going out and doing something, or doing something that's authentic to a destination. How do you see that trend kind of being impacted by COVID, but going into the next year?
Well, I think that currently, the experiences, we're having to find different ways to experience things, right? Like Susan said, nature, like Evita has done already, the online pivot. And I believe we've become more open-minded in terms of how we can experience those, transformational experiences, or the ones that just take us out of our desks, away from our homes, away from isolation in a sense, to feel community. So I think that we are, as a whole, really longing to, experience that aspect of community, but at the same time, still have that facet of safety as a number one priority. So online has been something that's really useful. And going forward, I think that the combination, as Susan mentioned, between the digital experience and the in-person, safer outdoor experience can come together to create, even especially on the educational side, because when we want wellness, we're not just looking for a massage or, that's great as
Right.
well, but we're also looking for enrichment. And I think that the marrying of the two ideas of something digital with the actual in-person community building or the outdoor nature experience can really help to support that.
So Briohny, I think you probably have seen this too. We've actually experienced that people are actually seeking this even more so now, Samantha, this idea of experiences. And it's
Yes.
more from a holistic perspective. They're really looking for this balance of mind, body, and spirit, right? They want that to be a completely, to your point, a very holistic experience, as opposed to, and they're seeking it now more than ever. So, we say at Miraval, it's like, people need Miraval now more than ever because they've been in their homes and they're experiencing a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress. And so they're trying to find a way to heal and to find that balance.
Emotional
Right.
safety. It plays into
Mm.
the safety. I was saying it's a multi-pronged conversation. I think just listening to you both talk, emotional safety and that well-being is something that is of utmost importance right now, because even people who weren't having mental health issues, or they were under control, or they were kind of under the surface, it's escalated for everybody, and it's definitely, and I love what you're doing, Susan, with your properties. I did not know that you were digital free. I think that that's absolutely amazing, and definitely a safe space emotionally for people right now too. So that safety issue there's a lot
Yes.
into it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Absolutely. I
And
couldn't agree more, sorry, with
go
a
for it.
little bit with what you're both saying, because when it comes to searching, right, typically we seek transformation or change. We get into that searching mode when we hit a dark or a challenging obstacle in our life. And we're all sharing that right now globally. So I think that travel and wellness and this idea of searching is really trending in the next couple of years, if not longer.
Yeah, and that's such a perfect segue actually into my next kind of question, which is, we're all experiencing kind of this collective trauma right now of, we're in the midst of a social justice movement. We're, in a pandemic that seems to never be ceasing at this point. Um, we, for US based people, we just dealt with an election that was very tenuous. So there's just a lot going on. And I'd love to hear, I think we touched on a few of them, but if there's any other ways that you all are seeing wellness travel pivot in this time, or that you would like to see even wellness travel pivot.
I was saying, so this is traveling during COVID is interesting. Polarizing conversation, right? My community has 25,000 members from around the world, and we had to have some direct conversations to this because we are in this space also. We're talking about wellness and acceptance and all these things. But the truth of the matter is the greater public is into cancel culture, and, they get behind their keyboard and it's a lot of just like, fighting and opinions, and two things can't be true at the same time. And so what we realized was that it was a very polarizing conversation. You had the people on one end, especially in the beginning, that were just like, no, you shouldn't be going anywhere. You should be in the house and that's it. And then you have people on the other side who are like, okay, you don't understand what my life is like here. And there was a woman in NOMADNESS who I happen to know that she had an extremely traumatic experience in her home. This had happened years ago. And she was the first person that I saw in my community really post in the group saying that she was leaving. She took a trip to Jamaica, and it was earlier in COVID. And some people had some really, pointed opinions about this. And it was her experience and me knowing her personally that I realized, and it made me check myself and my own, opinions about the fact that home is not safe for everybody. Home is not a pleasant and positive space for everyone. There's a lot of trauma inside of people's homes that we are completely unaware of. And so I think we need to usher over a little bit of perspective, a bit of patience, a bit of understanding, and that some people who are taking the move to travel right now, especially for wellness, they're doing what they have to do to kind of just keep it together in this moment. To your point, Samantha, about all of the levels of things that have been happening, I just got back from Puerto Rico at 5 o'clock this morning, and that second trip, because I've traveled to both Bermuda and to San Juan, Puerto Rico during quarantine. And I have my own weekly testing that I get done. I'm very, very adamant about testing. I've had about a dozen COVID tests since this started. But there was something about it that made me realize that we have to offer over a little bit of understanding to one another a bit more in this space, because we don't know what people are going through. Domestic violence has gone up during COVID. There are a lot of things that are external but internal to people's lives that we are just simply unaware of. And so I think we need to not pass judgment, but have a bit of understanding while also curating our own process on how to deal with what we may be going through personally during this time.
Absolutely. And such a powerful statement of, the idea that home is not always the safe place to come back to. And maybe travel was I don't want to say escape, but the way you lived your life in order to have peace within yourself. So that's very, important point.
We did hear that a lot from our guests, right? So Evita, you're absolutely right. As our guests were coming back to Miraval, they were sharing with us that this is their sanctuary. This was the escape because of everything that we've gone through for 8 months, and the trauma that you have at varying degrees, even just being, cooped up inside of your home for 8 months and not being able to experience the outdoors. So it is, for people, it is a safety, it's a safe place. It's a sanctuary. And I think that's very critical. Past trauma and distress, that registers as physical pain, right? And in order to work through that, when you're traveling with wellness, when we think about our Life and Balance Spa, that offers, through massage and body work, where we can actually help to reset your physical body, which is going to help you as you return back to your homes and to whatever those unfortunate circumstances may be that you're dealing with. So we feel that it's an opportunity, a unique opportunity to heal for our guests, and we believe in the personal approach that humans help humans, and it's the human touch and the energy work that's going to help you as you return back, and to help you achieve, again, that balance that we're talking about and heal. So we think it's very important, and we're hearing that from our guests, that that's why they're traveling, and to our properties, because they're seeking that. They really need it.
I couldn't agree with both of you more, actually. And to, again, bring together what you're both saying, Evita, I find so many people are afraid to travel, not just because of everything that's going on, but because of judgment, fear of judgment, or other people's opinions. This person said this and that. And that's why one of the trends that I'm seeing in yoga, especially because one of the biggest trends with yoga in the past, and I think it will continue to be, is going for retreats and teacher trainings, whether it be yoga, meditation, breath work, or all combined. And I'm seeing people go in pods now, people who are friends or friends on Instagram even, or even in their own city, decide to do it all together, whether it be the initial testing, COVID testing, picking the place, making sure that this destination is safe, and so on and so forth. And then even experiencing staying in their pods together during the wellness retreat, as well as continuing to quarantine upon return. So that travel pod is something that I'm seeing trending, and I think will continue to be something interesting for the next year to come.
Absolutely. There's been so much talk about, podding and creating that kind of group that you feel comfortable with and around. And I'm sure that will definitely transcend into 2021. And speaking of kind of trends for 2021, I'd love to hear from all of you on anything else that trend wise you think will be kind of a big moment for next year and even beyond.
Yeah, there's so much. I feel like the intersectionality that's there, like I said, I am drowning in data right now because released our report in early December. But it's so fascinating and it's so amazing. Something that I think we knew through experience, because we also curate trips through NOMADNESS. But it was amazing to see overwhelmingly when we had over 5,000 people fill out our survey over a number of weeks that we were actually promoting it. So we also have one of the biggest sample sizes that's been out for travelers of color. And as we're going through all of the data, the top 3 types of trips that they are most inclined to go for are immersive, which is something that we know. In NOMADNESS, we're all about the nitty gritty. Where do the locals eat? Where did they go hang out? What are they doing? What type of transportation did they use? We're very big on making sure that our money goes back into the community and that we're leaving something as much as we're taking from that space. But also it was followed up. Immersive was number 1, culinary was number 2, but adventure and outdoor was number 3. Now this is specific, and I say this being a Black woman. There are a lot of stereotypes that we do not like the outdoors. That we don't, and so this is something that has been prevalent. And so we know with the likes of not just our influencers, like a good friend of mine, Kelly Edwards, who in my eyes is like a freaking superhero, mountaineer, rock climber, deep sea diver, pilot, all of these things. But we know that we're not a monolith when it comes to the traveler of color, the Black traveler specifically, right? We have so many varied interests that are across the board. We have different styles. 77% of the people that we had fill out our survey are in the moderate price range with the types of experiences that they're looking for. And there are also communities for wellness within our community. I know when we were brainstorming this, I'd be remiss not to bring up communities like Noir, run by Christina Rice, who's amazing. She's started off as a PR agent, as a publicist, and left that world of entertainment to end up creating something a couple years ago for specifically Black women in the wellness space, right? And so I think that I always look at things from the community base. I'm more of a community organizer than influencer by far. And so said, I'm always looking at and wondering, where are the people and what are the people asking for? The potting is definitely legit. We are doing more boutique style, smaller groups. My group was actually in India with a group of 45 people when everything hit the fan with COVID back in March, and we had to get all of these people safely back, which we did, thank goodness. But understanding the sizing, what people want as far as safety, and that even in the same pod, in the same group traveling as a trip together, people's level of caution are different. Finding ways to show that and to be able to curate that. One of the coolest things I saw was on a fellow person in the travel industry's trip. They had different color-coded bracelets that represent what level of not communication, but interaction, physical interaction this person wanted throughout the course of the trip, which I thought was so amazing. It just set the stage. It wasn't an awkward conversation, nothing like that. It's like, okay, you have this color bracelet on. I know exactly where you are in this space. And so I think it's curating, like what you did, Susan, asking first. One of the things
Yes.
me so much at the beginning of COVID is everybody on this call got about 100 emails within 2 weeks from every single company newsletter list that they had ever signed up for, ever. And it was all about their COVID protocols and what they were going to do. And what bothered me was nobody asked what anyone needed. It's like they were talking at their community. And so NOMADNESS, we waited a couple weeks before our first communication went out. And literally in it, it was a 5-question survey. And it was, how can we best show up for you right now? To your point, Susan. And we actually created our content at that moment in time based off of what they wanted to talk about and what they were thinking about. And guess what? Travel content was the last on the list of what we gave them. So I think understanding and never forgetting that you're dealing with humans at all times who are going through real life changes right now, guys. Like, this is very, very serious. Understanding and always approaching from that place of empathy, I think, is super, super important and needs to be a trend and a part of your company's DNA at this point, if it wasn't already.
Yeah, I want to add on to that because, Evita, I think you're spot on. We've actually even taken that a step further, and we had the exact same discussion with our colleagues. And it's so interesting that you brought up the wristbands, because at Miraval, we actually, as we were bringing colleagues back into the workplace, we asked them to share with us their level of comfort in interacting with guests, and literally gave them different colored wristbands so that they could help each other as well. If they saw that, a guest was coming in and maybe not being as respectful as they would have been comfortable with. So it's such a reciprocal a relationship that has to work in this. It's a very sensitive environment right now. What we've seen, to your point, is of the programming that we offer, absolutely our guests are all resonating with anything outdoors, right? Outdoor adventures, hiking, biking, horses, our equine program that we offer. They really want that ability to be outside and to connect. And, we're fortunate that we sit on hundreds of acres of nature preserves in our properties. So, for us, it sets the stage for renewal, for reflection. It allows for our guests to be where they want to be, and in much smaller settings, right? So you could either have a private or you could be in a group, but the group is maxed out for social distancing to make sure that we're being respectful of that safety and safety protocol. The other thing that I found really interesting that we've had a very increased interest in is our spiritual well-being programming. So our healers, our astrologers in our properties are sold out. I mean, you can't get into their classes. So I think people are really wanting to understand, again, not just the physical well-being aspects of it, but the mental and the emotional. And I do think that that's a trend moving forward into next year, is this idea of mental well-being. I was just at the Global Wellness Summit, and certainly that is a very hot topic that's on a lot of people's minds right now. A lot of people don't even realize that they're dealing with anxiety and stress. And how can we offer programming that can help you discover at your level and give you the tools that you need as you go back home. So I see that as something that's going to stay on the forefront in at least the next couple of years.
Absolutely. I think we've seen also a lot of uptick in that, just in content wise, of people really gravitating towards figuring out kind of where they're placed in this world, and also just like the spiritual, how can they heal in this moment, because it's so, as we've said, so impactful and so stressful. So yeah, definitely interesting. And I think I'd love to point, to everyone's point of comfort and level of safety. There are some travelers or previous travelers who aren't yet to that point of being comfortable traveling, right? So of getting out there. And I guess, what would all of you give as points to those who aren't yet there, but are planning for their next adventure, possibly into 2021?
That's a really good question, if I may start with that.
Please.
I think touching upon what we just talked about, communication, even though, we're looking to be a bit more removed and be a bit more private when we travel, communication in the planning phases are so important. So as a traveler, knowing that what questions you should be asking so that you know what you're comfortable with, as well as from a brand standpoint, whether it's a hotel or, a travel agent, a retreat center, that knowing what people are looking for and taking those safety precautions. I've seen a lot of people within my industry right now looking for long-term stay. And that's been a very interesting, change, right? Because kids are, at least where I am, not in school. And this does seemingly, seem to be the year that we can go live somewhere else. So I've seen, that as a possibility in countries like Thailand or closer to where we are in Tulum in Mexico, and people doing that. So if you're looking to travel or if you're looking to host, people traveling, it's just important to really be as educated as possible in terms of what you need to feel safe.
Absolutely. And to add to that, again, I come from everything from the space of community, right? So even though we may not be able to congregate en masse in person, our online communities have become more valuable than ever now, because that is the place where we can commune. And there's so many different ways that looks like. There's Facebook, there's Instagram, there's Mighty Networks, there's now Clubhouse for those of us that are in Clubhouse. Like there's all of these different ways that we are able to commune online. And I think NOMADNESS specifically, we are such a massive worldwide resource of just one-to-one information. When I went to Bermuda about a month ago, speaking at their first socially distanced tourism summit, spending a couple extra days there to just kind of decompress and debrief, I ended up doing a 12-minute video live about all the precautions that I was so impressed that they were taking, from a biohazard tent that was at the airport to an isolation key at the hotel where you can only get into your hotel room once until your negative COVID test comes back from the test that you just took a couple hours ago at the airport. The level of detail that they went through was just amazing. And me sending that out just organically to my community, it ended up going viral. And the next thing I know, a couple days after I leave, I'm on Bermuda's TV and newspaper behind this video. And so it's those things where and I'm very careful of the term influencer. It's not my favorite term, but the influencer marketing is definitely something to look at, and their community really follows them. And in many ways, we're kind of like the guinea pigs at this point in time. They want the information. They want to know what it is. I'm very big and very vocal about showing all the COVID tests that I take, and that when I get home, I don't feel comfortable being around anyone until I've had 2 negatives split up at least over a week. That's just my process that I advocate for myself. People have to figure out what their process is for themselves. Another huge data point that is going to be very interesting when I do this presentation that came up is, of all of the sources of advertising that our community, the people that took our survey, tourism marketing was the least influential in them making a decision on if they traveled somewhere. And that is going to be a very interesting and in-depth conversation. And number one was actual, like, an influencer that they trust, that they're a part of their community, that they listen to their words, they understand, they have influence. That was actually one of the top that they have, including blogs that people have been following for a number of years. So there's a trust quotient here that is not just with the influencer, but also what type of trust their community has in them. Because not every influencer has trust. They may have followers, but they may not have trust. And so finding trustworthy community organizers and influencers that have these followings are really, really key and important with how you market your safety in your destination. Really important.
Yeah, great.
I,
Go for it, Susan.
I was just gonna, not only was I'm gonna say I'm gonna call Evita after this because I want to talk to her a little bit more about Miraval.
Likewise.
But I think when you think about what travelers who are just getting back on the road should be thinking about, my answer is themselves, right? They should be focused on what's going to make them comfortable, what's going to rejuvenate them in travel, and then find those destinations, to your point, whether it's through an influencer or through, through research that has that's going to be able to meet their needs. What do they need to feel comfortable traveling? And really making sure that that's what their number one priority is as they get back on the road.
Yeah,
definitely. If I may just end that, because I know you but trust is so trust is so powerful, Evita. And I just recently planned, my first travel internationally, and I'm going to Thailand. I've done all of my, events there. I want to go and see if maybe I can run an event there in the upcoming years and in the upcoming year. And trust was a big thing. I trust the country. I know that through my connections there that they're being incredibly vigilant, and whether it be from the airport to transporting people to the hotels, how are the hotels being regimented to actually keep them sanitary? And it's trust. It's trusting. I've been there so many times. I know that the vibe isn't going to be stressful, because you can go certain places where during this pandemic it can actually be more stressful than relaxing, with everybody trying to stay away from one another and people freaking out about being too close. And so you really have to make sure that you trust through your own research, that this is going to be safe and enjoyable for you.
perfect. Well, I do want to open, cognizant to time, I do want to open it to our Q&A because we do have a couple of questions. And I wanted to, I think two of them really speak to this idea of safety that we've talked about through this entire panel. But as far as kind of planning a trip abroad or domestic, besides looking to influencers or people that you trust, what can you do as a traveler to ensure that things are safe for you and that attractions are kind of up to your standards? Susan, why don't we start with you?
Well, I'm just going to suggest how we're approaching it at Miraval,
Yeah.
and that is, for us, it's really important to exactly what Briohny said. We're, it's building that trust, right, with our travelers. And so we have, overall, Miraval, we are receiving a accreditation from GBAC, which is the Global Biorisk, Advisory Council. We have hygiene managers that have now been assigned to all of our properties. We have the safety seals that are being put on the door that, when you walk into your guest room, you are the first one to be in that guest room after it's been cleaned and sanitized. So we're advising all of that on our website, so that as guests and travelers are doing the research, we can make it easy for them to understand that. We're also making sure that our experience planners, those that are on the other end of the phone when you're calling to set up your experiences, are well educated in what these safety protocols are, so that we can help you to better understand. So I would say, doing the research, checking on the websites and seeing what information, whether it's a Miraval or another property, how are they establishing that trust for you, and that you're going to be safe when you arrive.
Great. And
advocating for yourself. Have a list of things. I mean, I think at this point, 8 or so months into this, you kind of know what makes you comfortable and what makes you uncomfortable at this time, right? So take that and apply it to what a travel situation would be like. I literally travel with a full container, and I did not think I would get through security with this the first time, but they have never stopped me. A full container of antibacterial wipes, not like the little pouches, like a full plastic, like tube container. And I wipe everything down. The first couple times I flew, I also had like one of the like hazmat-y type suits on. I always have a mask on and a shield. My big thing is like the airplane and the airport makes me a little bit weary. I think once I have gotten to where I'm going, and that's the other thing, look at airlines, which ones are still blocking out the middle seats? What type of seats make you feel more comfortable? I am way more diligent and conscious of what seats I'm picking now on planes and why. And what it looks like. I pay a lot of attention to seat maps on airlines now, but I just think don't be scared to also just curate your own mini list of questions that, depending on the answer, you will feel more comfortable. just ask the questions, but curate your own set of questions, create your own personal checklist on what you think would make you feel comfortable. And for me, because my first trip was to a place that was extremely, on top of it, they only had 4 cases on the island, period. And then to go to a place that's more lax, like Puerto Rico, there were things that I realized that I implemented that I did in Bermuda and I do at home to make me feel more safe in Puerto Rico because they weren't doing XYZ, right? So you also kind of learn and remix it and create your own path as you go. So I think don't be scared to ask questions, but also don't be scared to advocate for yourself through action or speaking up if something just makes you feel uncomfortable or you think needs to be addressed.
Great.
And if I may just add to that, I would say to remember that, wellness is also about your immune system, and travel can cause stress on your body, on your nervous system. Stress can cause stress on your nervous system. So to try your best to practice wellness. If you're going somewhere for this idea of wellness, you can start practicing it. You can be vigilant without being stressed out. And I find, personally, the first time I traveled domestically, I was stressed the whole time. And then I started to feel a little under the weather. And then you feel that, and then you start to feel worse. So remember that, yeah, you definitely want to begin to practice that wellness from the get-go, and choosing destinations, that do help you really work on your wellness, whether it be good foods, understanding, what helps you feel healthy from the inside out. And I'll go back to Thailand. I experience that every single time I'm there, when I stay at a certain place that is really oriented around that full embodiment of wellness, from the food, from the aromas, from the idea of, meditation and pranayama and other wellness activities.
Yeah, definitely. I am itching to get somewhere soon for sure. The other question that we had for Q&A was that essentially what's kind of the future, how we see the future of group travel. I think we talked about pods and we talked about kind of, making a group of core travelers, but as far as kind of like bigger groups coming together, what do you guys see as kind of the future of that, looking to 2021?
I think for NOMADNESS specifically, because like I said, we do on average at least 4 group trips a year under normal circumstances. We've either canceled or postponed all of them after our India trip this year, going into 2021. And I have a feeling we're probably going to end up having to postpone one that we had in February. With that being said, for us, like I said, very much more boutique styles. I think also, and Susan, I really like how you all did this too. I think also with having the more intimate size groups, you have an opportunity to use them also as a focus group in individual trips to figure out what would make these specific people feel more comfortable, right? I don't think it's a one size fits all. And I think that we should just be mindful of that. Each destination is going to be different. Each group of people that you go with are going to be different. I know for us, everything from the logistical side and it being, travel health insurance always being mandatory. But now what does that look like? Because as from the business owner's point of view as well, especially being a small business that runs these experiences internationally, talking with my team, it's also like, okay, the country that we're trying to get into has XYZ protocols, but what are our protocols? Like what we have every right as organizers and as our own company to make our own provisions that make us feel safe, because we are still staff members that are also running this experience. So, if a country says you only need a COVID test negative within the last 7 days, we have every right to be like, we need to see a negative within the last 72 days. And that's what is going to happen if you want to come on a NOMADNESS experience. And so I think from the business and community organizer point of view, also, it's about figuring out what is now going to be in the ethos of like what's the DNA of your experiences now, and in what ways are you protecting both the people on the experience, but also your business?
Absolutely. Yeah, if either panelists have anything to add as well.
Yeah, I would just add that when we think about it at Miraval, a group is defined very differently, right? It could be a group of 8 women who are celebrating a bachelorette party, and just want to have a wonderful time together, all the way up to groups from major companies that want to hold a retreat, a wellness retreat or something. So for us, I think the answer there is collaboration, because I think that Evita is right. How we're approaching it is we really want to make sure that we have a good understanding of what each particular group's needs are. I do think that what we hear from organizations into the future is that, group travel, if you will, when you think about from a group perspective, is probably not going to be very well supported through the first half of next year. We have to see what happens with the vaccine and the distribution of it. So when we think about a traditional group, we really think it's going to be about collaboration with, how are we setting up what that group experience is going to be with that group planner, as well as what are the federal guidelines that are going to allow us to, right? How large can that group be? So we really see it as kind of a collaboration that's it will come back. It's just going to take time.
Absolutely. Great point.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's hard to say, where it's going to be and when it's going to be normal. But in my space, we're so deeply rooted in immersive experiences, whether it be the retreats and the teacher trainings and so on and so forth. And people are really longing for that. Online is great. Zoom is great. We're pivoting and we're feeling that community here as we're doing now. But people, I find, are really, really looking forward to when we can congregate again as a group. And I've, seen and heard some different ideas been thrown around. The longer stay immersive, 30 days, 45 days, or what in my industry, at least, people are interested in. And so, that it being cost effective is one of the most important things people are looking for. So countries like Thailand, like Bali can become, or Bali's not a country, but you know what I mean, can become very interesting in that aspect. And then the idea of having options, much like the bracelets, people's level of comfort is going to have to be taken into account, and doing things in stages. So, taking temperature every day, of course, doing weekly testing. We have yet to figure out who pays for that. That's sort of, something as an event organizer, you might have to eat as a cost depending on where you are. And, week by week, perhaps the level of comfort for a certain person becomes more comfortable. So, more people can begin to become a pod and others can decide to stay somewhat apart. And last but not least, a location that has the outdoor functionality to host, whether it be a yoga class or group activities in its space, is very important.
Yeah, definitely great points. And I think, again, the through line is really like being outdoors is so important in general, but I think that people are really feeling the need to be out, especially if they've been in their homes for, such a long time. Well, I do have a final question for you all, kind of on a fun note. So to end, I'd love for you all to shout with where you plan on going next once you feel comfortable, and kind of what your plans are for your next travels. Briohny, why don't we start with you?
I'm going to Thailand. I'm so excited. I mean, I live by a beach, but it's just not the same. So I'm going to go to Thailand. I'm going to stay at one of my favorite, very, remote island resorts, and just treat myself and my family to, a very much needed sort of vacation in a sense, but really dedicated to wellness. I'm excited to do some cooking. I know, Evita, you said like one of the major things is people wanted to cook, and I feel that way as well. I'm like, I think my kids are really sick of my cooking, so I'd like to learn some new things to cook, and practice meditation and feel healthy, not just be healthy, but feel healthy.
Yeah. Yeah. Dream trip. Susan, what about you?
I feel like my answer should be I'm going to Disney World, but that's not where I want to go. No, when I think about this, and as we've talked about this, for the last 8 months, I've been away from my family, and the desire to want to connect with my family is overwhelming. So my first dream trip will be to go to Aruba with them. That was one of our best trips we've ever had as a family, and I'm really looking forward to getting us all back there and reconnecting together, so that we all of our mind, body, and souls can be rejuvenated. So,
yeah, Aruba is definitely also next on my list of three. Basically anywhere near water, but definitely. And Evita, what about you?
I too have been distanced from somebody that's really, really special to me. So it's really, for me, I think my next one is going to be about reconnecting. And they're located in France. So I think France would be my, yeah, my next one.
Yeah, that's not a bad place to reconnect with a loved one, for sure. Well, thank you so much again to everyone who joined, and thank you again to our amazing panelists, Avita, Briohny, Susan. You guys were just amazing and got so many insights. And yeah, until our next travels.
Thank you so much. Awesome.
Thank you
very
Such a
much.
pleasure.
Everybody be healthy, be safe.
Be healthy and stay
Thank
safe.
you.